Hello, my lovelies. I'm Ginny O, the author with no last name. And this is Ginny O Reads, the part of the channel where I read the first chapter of an independent science fiction or fantasy book. Last time, I said that I was going to read the first chapter of We Are Mars by Cheryl Lawson. However, when I contacted Cheryl Lawson through Twitter to find out the status of We Are Mars, I learned that she's doing an in-depth story edit of the book. And she has asked me to hold off reading and reviewing the book until she's finished, which will be sometime in early 2020. In light of this fact, I have decided to read a different book this week. Since my last recordings, I have become part of a new website called Our Own Worlds at ourownworlds.com. It's a speculative fiction community for independent writers and readers. And through the different authors of Our Own Worlds, I was able to get some free books. And one of these books is called The Korpes Files by J.I. Rogers, a dystopian science fiction novel. You can find J.I. Rogers on Twitter at JIRogers_author, or you can find her at her website at JIRogers-author.com. Links in the description below. From the back of the book. As if being born Dystopian wasn't enough, Technician Nash Korpes had the bad luck to resemble his Terran ancestors almost identically in both form and manner. These traits, though highly prized by the Special Projects Division at the shadowy Korpes Military Research and Development, mark him as a specter from their warlike past. With only his intellect holding his sanity in place, he wages a private war against the entire socio-economic status quo and begins to uncover the truth that threatens them all. You can follow along with me on Amazon through the Look Inside feature, link in the description below. The Korpes Files isn't actually set up into chapters, so I will be reading around 8 pages of part 1. Let's get right into it. Part 1. Year 2596. Teslam Station. An unexpected sneeze broke the silence. Dr. Ayla Centauro looked up and noted the lighting had shifted into a night cycle. She checked the time. 1900? Already? 2 hours had slipped by without notice, and only one member of her team remained. You always stay late. She smiled with almost maternal affection at the young man working across from her. Excuse me, ma'am. Tech Nash X-Corps apologized. He remained hunched over his digipad, focused on what he was working on. She'd requested him by name for her design team, and had raised more than a few eyebrows, but he was worth the extra friction. He was one of a kind, not just in mind, but in looks. Unlike the Korlo, who were xenophobic, the refugee population had embraced the concept of blending generations ago. Known collectively as Dystopian, the refugees encompassed the Ibu, Durakar, Birlo, and Terran populations that had sought sanctuary in Kowloon and Anchorage. Throwbacks were a genetic blip that appeared among them, and they were the physical embodiment of their ancestors. Until Nash, she'd never encountered a Terran throwback. Her remaining staff was Korlo like herself. Amid his dark-haired, blue-eyed co-workers, Nash's starkly pale appearance and green eyes were distinctly alien. Aylis didn't notice the differences anymore unless he stood up unexpectedly. He towered over everyone on sight by over a head. Korpes Military Research and Development's recumbent genetics department had been thrilled when Nash transferred to Teslam. The RecGen labs considered getting their hands on any throwback an achievement. Terran and Birlo were especially desirable. Nash worked as a tech for her 3 days a week. The rest of the time he was assigned to the RecGen labs as an unofficial subject. Nash's fingers danced across the digipad in front of him, his eyebrows shut up, and he furiously entered in new lines of code. It must be coming together. Alice recognized the expression of delight on his face and grinned in response. Almost done with that thruster upgrade, Tech Korpes? Yes, ma'am. It's ready to go. When you have a minute, I'd like to show you the tweaks. He didn't look up until he finished the line of code and began compiling it. She made her way over to his workstation and looked at the screen. The two-dimensional version of his work appeared, and he transferred it to the small hologrid. Walk me through your design. I've modified the coloring and added new intakes here and here to create a hotter burn. There was no way to get around the issues with the fuel lines without a complete redesign. So I added an internal hollow-ridden gel power supply as a backup system. Nash looked up. I hope you don't mind, but I've already run a simulation. With these augments in place, it'll cycle faster and reduce the vibration issues. I recommend that we swap out the old Shotcut chipsets for the new ones manufactured by Harlow Fire. They're made from tellurium fiber fused with graphene, so they'll withstand the energy loads without superheating or fracturing. Their flexibility will allow us to adjust the housing to this configuration. Looks aren't everything, Tech Korpes, and we don't happen to have a supply contract with Harlow Fire. Nash flashed a shy smile, then opened the drawer under his desk. Perhaps the department should consider one. I discovered that this is what happens when you try to run that kind of current through the Shotcut chipset for longer than an hour at a time. He handed her a melted mass of plastic so she could examine it. As you can see, they're not going to work for this new build. Simulation? Alice grinned down at her assistant. The VR lab was occupied. Master Mac Channing gave me the parts for that mock-up. Impressive. Alice pulled her digipad out of her pocket and booked the VR lab for the rest of the week. You now have 4 days to run this new config through its paces. Log the results. So I have something to present at the next departmental meeting. If I order the parts now, can you have a prototype ready for me to demonstrate at the end of the month? Yes, ma'am. Nash went back to work. Alice returned to her desk and brought up Harlow Fire's site on her digipad. She found the reference numbers for the chipsets Nash had indicated and added them to her requisition order. She made a notation about the halogen cells under that. Can you think of anything else you'll need? Not now, ma'am. I'll send the specs for the housing to Master Mac Channing. Alice signed off on the form, leaving the team information blank. Nash had already managed to alienate important people on staff, and she learned that adding his name to any project drew negative attention. Such a shame. The wars end and the hate lingers with the radiation. Alice reflected on the fact that history was always written by the victors. It was moot. The discrimination against anyone with Terran ancestry had become so institutionalized that it had its own status as a medical condition. Tyranniophobia. She couldn't discount it entirely. For some, it truly was a negative pheromone response. For most, it was just a convenient excuse. State-sanctioned hate. Alice had witnessed inappropriate outbursts from staff in the last year, but to his credit, Nash hadn't responded. In fact, he didn't seem to hold their reactions against them. Alice considered that a mark of exceptional character. A beep drew her out of her thoughts and announced a waiting message on her digipad. She keyed in her access. Another tour? Don't these people have access to clocks? Alice sighed loud enough that Nash heard her and sat up. Something wrong, ma'am? We're about to have visitors. But there's no reason why you should suffer too. Get out before you're trapped again. The smile he bestowed on her was all the proof she needed of his gratitude. Alice cut him off before he could say anything. Shoot! They'll be here any minute. Nash didn't have to be told twice. He ducked out the side door and jogged back to his room. Time for some light reading. He absently slid the key card into the lock and stepped inside, ducking so he wouldn't crack his skull on the header. The first thing that caught his attention was the clothes that littered the entranceway, forming a random path into the room beyond. The distinctly feminine giggle made Nash sigh. His roommate was seldom around, but when he was never alone. Okay, hint taken, Gary. I hate you, you lucky bastard. Nash withdrew discreetly, locking the door before heading to his favorite alternate reading spot. Nash was halfway through the latest journal from Makandi Corps when his attention was drawn to an odd noise. The distortion made it hard to identify at first, so he put his head closer to the duct he'd climbed through and listened. This section's closed. What the hell? Someone was running down the corridor adjacent to him. There was a dull clang as the screen covering the ventilation shaft was shifted, and a small, frightened-looking boy invaded his sanctuary. "Help me," he mouthed silently. Nash could hear pursuit. The footfalls were heavier and closing rapidly. He looked back at the boy, whose expression had become one of dread. "I'm not the scary monster for once." Nash winked and held his finger up to his lips, indicating that the little intruder should remain silent. He lifted the boy past him, placed his digipad carefully on the floor, and edged closer to the opening. He didn't have to wait long. "Come out, Trent, if you know what's good for you." A hand appeared and grabbed a fistful of Nash's t-shirt. He put up no resistance, and let himself be pulled out into the hall. Nash flashed a wicked grin as he stood and stretched to his full height. He then surveyed the group of boys before him and memorized the names on their tags. Young, well-fed, excellent. I was starting to get hungry. He reached out for the boy that had touched him. The mob screamed in unison and fled. Nash's laughter drowned out all the sounds of their retreat, but he waited until they were out of range before he spoke. "It's safe to come out." "They're gone." "Okay." The answer was small and hesitant. The boy emerged cautiously from the vent, cradling Nash's digipad. He looked up and suddenly stopped. His mouth dropped open in shock. Nash hadn't been standing when they'd first met. "What's your name, kid?" "Davis. Assistant Mech Davis Trent, sir. Are you a giant?" The look of wonder on the boy's face was priceless. For an instant, Nash contemplated saying yes. "No, I'm not a giant. My name's Nash." He held out his hand and shook hands with the boy. "Let me guess. You're part of the new trainee group that came in last week? No offense, but how old are you?" Nash couldn't gauge the boy's age. He looked like he was 8. "I'm 13. According to Mom, I take after Dad's side of the family, and we grow late. I think I'm the shortest guy here, though. I'm shorter than most of the girls, too, and that's embarrassing. But I'm still a better mech than any of them are. I kind of proved it already, and that's why I've got the fan club." He paused. This giant was watching him with an amused expression on his face. "Something funny?" "You're from one of the northern diaspora, aren't you?" "I'm from Saroon. Hey, how'd you guess?" "Accent." Nash smiled at the little guy. He liked him. He held out his hand. "Can I have my digipad back, please?" "Uh-huh." Davis looked briefly at the material Nash had been reading. "Just so you know, that Makande Corps stuff isn't as good as the latest tech from Harlow Fire. Someday I'm going to work for Harlow Fire as a master mech and oversee my own section and everything." Nash hoped he got his wish. "Good luck." "Nice meeting you, Davis." Nash wanted to go back to reading, but the tiny interloper didn't seem to want to take hints well. "How tall are you?" Nash looked down at the boy, annoyed, then realized that he was only curious. 1.85 meters. "There must be a lot of bulkheads and doors in this place that give you headaches. Is everyone in your family that tall?" "No, I'm the tallest." "I'll bet you and me are the tallest and the shortest people stationed here. That's funny. This proves that we're supposed to meet. What you doing now?" "My group isn't scheduled to begin anything until next week, and I don't really want to go back to the dorms because they'll be waiting for me. Thanks for scaring them, by the way. I really appreciate it. Do you have a brother or sister? What diaspora do you come from?" The relentless surge of dialogue only stopped when Nash started to laugh. "I don't think I've ever met someone who talks as much as you do. How can you do that and not stop to breathe?" "I'm sorry. People tell me I talk too much all the time, but I can't help it. If I'm bothering you, I can go." Davis stared up at him with his big blue eyes, silently begging Nash to let him stay. It worked. "I'm getting hungry. How about I buy your dinner, and you tell me a bit about yourself?" Nash led him to the main cafeteria, and listened to Davis as he told him not only his entire life story, but vividly outlined his master plan for getting into the private sector. He never encountered someone with this much enthusiasm, and found it both mesmerizing and exhausting. "You've got a lot of ambition, Assistant Mech Trent. I wish you the best of luck. Nash finished the last of his meal and got up to leave. "So, what do you do here?" Davis smiled up at him. "I'm just a tech in weapons development." Nash pushed the chair in. Davis rose, frantically searching for a way to continue the conversation. Nash recognized the startled for attention expression on the boy's face and saved him the effort. "Would you like a private tour, Davis? Teslam Station is the largest training facility in Kowloon." "Would I? You bet! I didn't think anyone here was friendly, because when I first got here it was all so formal, and we used our last names instead of our first or just our tag numbers. You're the first person to talk to me, or ask me my name, and not read it off my ID. How long have you been here?" "Working for KMR&D, or working in this place?" "You've worked other places, too? I didn't think you were that old. Oh, sorry." Davis bit his lip, thinking he just offended his new friend. Nash laughed. "Don't worry about it. I'm 19, so to you I probably am old. I've worked in a lot of other facilities, but it's not as impressive as it sounds." Nash winked. "Rumor has it I'm a bit of a troublemaker, and hard to get along with. This is the longest I've worked anywhere, to be honest. And I've only been here a year. Being seen with me might not be good for your reputation, Davis. Still want that tour now that you know the truth about me?" Davis didn't miss a beat. 19? That's only 6 years older than me, and whoever said that crap about you is a Kaluvavex. You just spent your free time hanging out with me when you could have spent it with your friend or your girlfriend. Nash grinned at the use of diaspora slang. It had been a long time since he heard the term son of a bitch in slang. The language differed from site to site, but the swear words remained universal. "Do you have access to the mech bays? I'd really like to see them. I've heard that they're big enough to house 5 full-size Bethune transports, with room to spare. Is it true that their domes can open to the surface, completely? I've never been topside before. Are we allowed to go outside?" "For the record, topside is overrated. It's beautiful, green, but remember, everything up there wants to kill you. You need an enviro suit to last a day." Nash shuddered, remembering his last excursion. "Weather. The mech bay you're thinking of is at Farrell Station. I was stationed there a couple years ago. Given how poorly designed the Bethune was, I'm surprised that there are 5 left in service now. Honestly, they just should leave the remaining ones out in the rain and redesign that monster." Nash grinned at the boy. "The bays aren't quite that large, but they're far more active. Right now, they have 3 of the Lantaran engines in for servicing, so you'll get to see military trains up close, if you've never seen one before." Nash indicated that Davis should follow and led his charge through the main concourse to a set of maintenance stairs. "Why didn't we use the lifts?" Davis asked, noting that they'd walked right past them. "I'm going to sneak you in. This is the easiest way." "Are we going to get in trouble for this?" Davis slowed down and looked for security. "Only if we're caught. I don't plan to be. Do you trust me, Davis?" Nash turned to face the boy, but only had to wait a few seconds for the answer. The boy nodded his head quickly, his expression conveying complete trust. Nash thought back to his first week on site and who'd he trusted. "I'm a crap role model, aren't I?" The question was rhetorical. He knew he was about to make an impression that would last a lifetime. It mattered. Do this by the book, Nash. "Change of plans. Come on." Nash approached the main doors to the hangar and spotted the man he was looking for near the entrance. He grabbed the tiny boy by the wrist and dragged him through the security check. "I have to speak to Master Mech Channing about stuff." He flashed his ID and a smile, counting on the fact that everyone knew who he was, even if it was only by description. The guard nodded, disinterested, and waved him through the checkpoint. Nash lost no time in closing on his target. "Sir, may I speak to you for a moment?" Nash's stride was hard for Davis to match, and he was forced to jog or be dragged. The Master Mech turned and waved him over. "And what can I do for you today, Tech Korps?" "I'd like permission to take someone on a quick tour of the operations here. But first, let me introduce you to him. This is Apprentice Mech Davis Trent. Davis, this is Master Mech Channing. Everything you see in this bay is under his direction, and at some point you will be too." The grizzled Mech Master stretched out his hand. "Pleased to meet you, Trent. Welcome to Tesla." Davis shook his hand, dazed. "A pleasure to meet you too, sir." Davis could barely contain his delight. Is it convenient for me to show him around the mech bay, sir? Nash's digipad beeped, indicating he had a message. Sorry, I need to check this. He turned the device on and read the note. New file received. Interview scheduled for tomorrow at 2100. Collect and review. A dark frown crossed his face. Another one. Fuck. Davis, I'm sorry, but I've got to go. Do you mind if we do this another day? Nash looked over at the master mech quickly. With your permission, of course, sir. You go do what you need to do. I've got some free time. I'll take care of the tour. Master Mech Channing looked down at the tiny board. Unless you mind the substitution, do you, Assistant Mech Trent? Davis shook his head. He turned, but Nash was already on the move. Catch you later, he called after the tall blonde. Sure, Nash answered, but his mind was elsewhere. When will they give up? What do you think of the story thus far? Would you continue reading? Please tell me in a comment. If you like my content, please like, subscribe, and share. If you have an independent science fiction or fantasy book that you would like me to read and review on my channel, please tell me about it in the comments. Review guidelines are on my website. If you'd like me to read or review more books, please help by donating to my Ko-fi. I'm doing this on my own time and with my own funds, and all funds donated to the Ko-fi will be going towards books or for better recording equipment. Thank you, every little bit helps. Next time will be Ginny O Reviews, where I'll be reviewing the entire book of the Korpes Files. See you next time, my lovelies.